Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us today for this episode of As a Matter of Fact. I want to start with just getting a little bit of your story. So can you tell us a little bit about what first sparked your passion for climate and specifically nuclear energy advocacy?
Yeah, so I was really lucky that when I was 16 years old, I got to intern at Fermilab doing astrophysics, which is a great opportunity for a high schooler. But I walked away from that saying, I really want to do something that has a direct impact. I want to do some engineering that I can really apply to the world, but being pretty lost about which engineering, which field to choose. And luckily, right at this pivotal moment, I met a physicist, and then separately, I met two female nuclear engineers who both told me, hey, it sounds like you want to work on global problems. It sounds like you're not afraid of tough technical challenges. Why don't you pursue nuclear? There's so many opportunities. There's a huge potential future. But you have to work for it. And I said, yeah, that challenge sounds fantastic. And I dove straight in. And I was lucky enough that it just clicked immediately. As soon as I got to college, started my major in nuclear engineering, I was like, this is exactly what I want. It's got the technical challenges, it's got the social political challenges, and it's got the potential for global impact. So I was lucky that I just had people come in at the right moment and say, hey, have you heard of nuclear engineering? Yeah, and I'm so lucky that along the way, there have always been people there who have helped bring me into whatever they're doing, but have also asked me the question, what interests you? What parts of nuclear do you really connect to? And then help me gain that expertise. So yeah, I mean, mentorship has been so important to me. And I always try to give back and mentor even the people just a couple years behind me, since near peer mentors have also been super valuable for me.
So digging more into the role of advocacy, it's clear you've got, a very technical engineering background. I'm curious what you think is really the role of advocacy in the nuclear energy industry.
Sometimes we talk about advocacy as if it's one thing, but really it can look different and look different in different places. So for a lot of people, advocacy means engaging with their local community. If you work at or near any kind of nuclear facility, those are the people who live in the townships that get the tax revenue. Those are the people who drive by your facility. And advocacy can really look like one-on-one interactions with people in your local community. It can obviously also look like interacting with policymakers at the local, state, federal level, to help them figure out how to make the policies that align with their goals and hopefully our goals as well. And then for me, it can also look like interacting with people online that just have all sorts of questions, who are interested or maybe afraid or intrigued, all these different, in some ways they're pulled to nuclear and just want people to answer questions. And then obviously, one person can never impact everyone else. So in my advocacy journey, I discovered that the way that I feel I can make the biggest impact is actually by educating the educators, if you will. I've dug pretty deep down into the science of communicating science and found that there's so many tips and tricks there. And so these days I do a lot less just going out and talking to people, but rather talking to my peers and saying, here's how your interactions can be better. Here's how you can do a better job connecting to policymakers, connecting to, your friends and neighbors around you. So there's so many different ways to do advocacy. And I encourage people that if you find one and it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean there's no place for you in advocacy. It just means maybe you need to be looking at a different kind of advocacy.
Definitely true. And you mentioned a couple times the online portion of advocacy, which you've obviously grown a very notable following on Twitter at Nuclear Katie, right? How did you get into this process? Like, what made you sort of want to really become the at Nuclear Katie on Twitter? How did you build your following, and why'd you want to go that route?
So I really stumbled into this. It was not an intentional, I'm joining Twitter to become an online advocate and to build a large following. It's just been a journey for me, discovering the ways that I like to share my knowledge, discovering the ways that I can connect with people online and have a positive experience. There's definitely a shortcut to followers. If you can tweet some incendiary things, get a lot of engagement, get people arguing and fighting, you can build up a lot of followers. That works for some people. That's not me. That's not the way I like to connect on the internet. But honestly, it's just being dedicated to learning and sharing constantly.
Okay, so shifting away from the online, world of advocacy, and talking a little bit about the policy implications and the policy aspects of nuclear energy, we've seen such a strong momentum at the state level that's bipartisan in nature in favor of nuclear as a tool in the toolkit to reach, zero carbon, or, as an all of the above strategy. What would you say to our advocates who are looking to get involved on those specific types of issues at the state level, with policies affecting them and their communities directly?
State politics are often overlooked. I would say the first thing is you just have to learn what's going on. I know many of us are not up to date on state policies. What is your legislator considering now? Who is your state representative, state senator? Just don't try to come in like a bull in a china shop who has no idea what's going on. Figure out who's already working on these issues, what bills are being considered now. Are there local or state grassroots groups that you can join? Oftentimes these things are much less flashy than the federal or even the intergovernmental level, but there are so many people who are already working on this issue. So the first thing I would say is just find these groups, find other people who are looking to work on the state level, and show up and say, how can I help? What are you working on? What questions are there? Where do you need more bodies? And then start getting to know your state senators and your state representatives and say, what do you know about nuclear? What are your questions about nuclear? What are your votes on these bills that I just looked up and I know exist? And start building those relationships.
Great. Very good. And of course, Nuclear Matters is another opportunity for both federal and state level advocacy as well. We try to make sure people are plugged in, but I love your point about the local grassroots organizations that are in those communities as well, being really vocal on these issues. More broadly speaking about the nuclear industry in general, what do you see are the greatest opportunities within nuclear energy right now? Are you excited about a specific type of innovation? Are you excited about specific technology, a specific policy trend? Where do you see is the greatest opportunity, and where are you personally looking to get involved next?
So I think something that I'm getting really excited about now is continuing to work with the incoming generation of current undergraduates or people who are at that sort of 18 to 22-year-old level who are interested in nuclear energy. They may not be pursuing an engineering degree, but as we look towards the future, if we succeed with these new technologies, we're going to need to grow this workforce, and not just grow it by nuclear engineers, but grow it in a huge variety of disciplines. So I'm really looking forward to helping those people find their own place in the nuclear industry. Whatever interests you, I promise there's an opportunity to take that field and apply it within nuclear. If you're interested in science, you can be a nuclear engineer, but you can also be a mechanical engineer, material science, electrical, systems, chemical. All of these fields have applications in nuclear, and the field hires people with these degrees. Even if we go outside the technical world, we need people with political science backgrounds, people with environmental science backgrounds, people with communications backgrounds, people with all sorts of backgrounds can find a home in the nuclear industry. So I would say, if you're interested in the field, but maybe you've looked at a nuclear engineering class and say, I don't want to be a reactor physicist, that's fine. You don't have to be a reactor physicist to be in the nuclear industry. So I would say pursue the things that you're interested in, and then find a way into nuclear by way of internships, by way of professional connections, LinkedIn, other social media, and that there is a place for you to go. But just get really good at whatever connects to you the most.
Love that answer. And as someone who is really passionate about nuclear, but is very not good at science and math and stuff like that. I'm glad to know even, myself and others like me who are more, I studied political science, studied some of those social sciences or English, can have a future in nuclear. I think that's awesome.
I mean, I've been spending so much time learning about the science of science communication, and it's a whole field of social science that I think the nuclear industry needs to not only learn the lessons from, but sponsor new science in this field. I think there are tons of areas of social science that us engineers sort of put our blinders on and don't think about. But when you open your eyes, you realize that nuclear is not just this one particular technical field. It's got all of these layers around it that take it from something that generates heat to something that creates electricity and affects our world and makes our world run. There's so many steps between those things, and we need people in all of those steps.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie, for your time. Really appreciate talking to you.